It was a hot August afternoon in Memphis, Tennessee, when Vanessa Davis decided to take a break from her hectic routine. With the sun still blazing in the middle of the afternoon, she walked into the McAllister's department store, hoping to find some deals in the clothing section. Vanessa, a 32-year-old black woman of average height with a serene demeanor, always preferred to do her shopping calmly and alone. As Vanessa wandered through the store aisles, her eyes landed on a cobalt blue silk blouse elegantly displayed on a mannequin. She smiled as she imagined it in her wardrobe, a perfect piece for work meetings or a casual dinner with her husband, Jay. Gently, she picked up the blouse from the rack and walked over to the nearest mirror to get a better look. While Vanessa was absorbed in her thoughts, a store employee, a young white man with a name tag that read Todd, watched her with a suspicious expression. He had seen her pick up other clothes before examining the blouse and seemed uneasy. Vanessa, oblivious to Todd's gaze, approached the cashier to inquire about a promotion. "Excuse me, is this item included in the 20% discount promotion?" Vanessa asked the clerk, her voice calm and polite. The clerk smiled and replied, "Let me check, ma'am." At that moment, Todd approached Vanessa with a rigid expression. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, but his tone was far from friendly. Vanessa felt a shift in the atmosphere. "Thanks, I'm just waiting to confirm the discount," she responded, trying to remain calm but sensing something off about the way he was looking at her. "I'm going to need you to come with me, ma'am," Todd said, now with a more authoritative tone. Vanessa frowned, confused. "Come with you? Why?" she asked, surprised. "We received a report that you were acting suspiciously. We need to check the contents of your bag," he said, already gesturing to the store security guards, who quickly moved in. Vanessa felt a chill run through her veins. "Suspicious? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just here to shop." The security guards, paying no attention to what Vanessa was saying, began to surround her. Indignation started to build within her. "This is ridiculous. I'm not a criminal. I just want to shop in peace." Todd, with an impassive expression, replied, "Ma'am, if you haven't done anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. Please open your bag." Vanessa hesitated for a moment, the embarrassment and humiliation weighing heavily on her. Other customers in the store began to notice the situation, looking over with curiosity. Trying to maintain her dignity, she opened her bag, revealing only her wallet, phone, and some personal items. "Here, as you can see, there's nothing wrong." Despite finding nothing incriminating, Todd and the security guards continued to treat her with suspicion. "We're going to need you to come with us to the security room for further questioning," one of the guards said, his voice cold and authoritative. Vanessa looked around, feeling completely vulnerable. "This is absurd. You have no right to treat me like this." An uncomfortable silence hung in the air. With no other options, Vanessa was escorted out of the sales floor and taken to a small room in the back of the store. There, she sat alone for several minutes, trying to control the anger and fear building inside her. She knew she needed help and quickly dialed Jay's number. "Jay, they're accusing me of stealing." Her voice trembled as she spoke, indignation now mixed with tears. On the other end of the line, Jay remained silent for a moment, trying to grasp the situation. "Vanessa, where are you?" "I'm coming right now," he replied, his voice firm and controlled but with a perceptible tension. Vanessa gave him the location, and as she hung up, she felt a bit calmer knowing Jay was on his way. What the store employees didn't know was that her husband was more than just a visitor. Jay Davis wasn't just her husband. He was someone who knew how to fight against injustices, and he wouldn't let this go unchallenged. As Vanessa waited, the reality of the situation began to weigh even more heavily on her. She knew that for some people, her skin color made her appear suspicious, no matter how respectable or honest she was. And now, as surreal as it seemed, she was living this terrible reality. At that moment, while Vanessa nervously awaited in the small security room, she could hardly imagine the impact that day would have on her life, and how everything would change when Jay arrived. Time seemed to drag as Vanessa waited in the small security room, where the heavy, suffocating air made each second feel like an eternity. Sitting in an uncomfortable metal chair, she struggled to control her breathing and the chaotic thoughts racing through her mind. How had a simple shopping trip turned into this nightmare? Minutes later, the door swung open abruptly, and two police officers entered, accompanied by Todd and another store security guard. The officers were tall, with stern expressions, and they seemed to have already decided Vanessa's guilt before even hearing her side of the story. "Ms. Davis?" One of the officers, with a severe face, called out. "We need you to come with us to the station." "Station? Why? I haven't done anything wrong. You can't treat me like this without proof." Vanessa rose from the chair, her voice trembling between anger and fear. "We received a call that you were attempting to steal items from the store," replied the other officer, his voice cold and distant. "This is a mistake. I was just looking at clothes and asking about a promotion. I didn't take anything." Vanessa insisted, feeling her desperation grow. Todd, who had been standing beside the officers, crossed his arms and stepped forward. She was acting suspiciously, and when confronted, she became defensive. "We thought it best to call the police." Vanessa looked at Todd with disbelief. "Suspicious? Just because I'm looking at clothes? Like any other customer would do?" The officers ignored her words, as they were already set on proceeding with the procedure. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court." The words hit Vanessa like a blow. She couldn't believe she was being treated like a criminal for something she didn't do. "This is a terrible mistake," she repeated, but her protests seemed to fall on deaf ears. One of the officers took out handcuffs and started to approach her. "Let's go, ma'am. We don't want any trouble." Vanessa took a step back, frightened. "You're going to handcuff me? In front of all these people? Please, this is unnecessary." The officer hesitated for a moment, but then, seemingly moved, put the handcuffs away. "We can avoid handcuffs, but you need to come with us immediately." With tears of frustration and helplessness streaming down her face, Vanessa nodded. "I'll cooperate, but this is an injustice." As she was escorted out of the security room and walked through the store floor, Vanessa could feel the eyes of other customers and employees on her. Murmurs and whispers filled the air, adding to her discomfort. She felt as if she were being judged by everyone, without even having the chance to defend herself. Upon leaving the store, the police placed her in the patrol car, and she found herself looking out at the world as if she were in a nightmare from which she couldn't wake. On the way to the station, Vanessa tried to process what was happening. Why was this happening to her? All she wanted was a quiet day of shopping, and now she was heading to the police station like a criminal. At the station, Vanessa was met with the same disdain she had experienced in the store. She was led into an interrogation room, where the cold walls and fluorescent light only heightened her discomfort. She sat in the metal chair, her hands trembling in her lap. "You have the right to make a phone call," one of the officers said, placing an old phone on the table in front of her. Vanessa picked up the phone with trembling hands and dialed Jay's number. When he answered, Jay's firm and reassuring voice was the only thing that gave her a glimmer of hope. "Jay, I'm at the station. They really brought me here. This can't be happening. Vanessa, I'm on my way. Don't say anything until I get there. Understand?" "Nothing," Jay replied, his voice carrying a calm authority that only experience could provide. "Got it, Jay. Please hurry," Vanessa responded, her voice still shaky. As she hung up the phone, Vanessa closed her eyes and tried to focus on her breathing, summoning the strength to face what was to come. She knew Jay wouldn't spare any effort to get her out of this situation, but until he arrived, she was alone in that hostile environment. Shortly after, one of the officers re-entered the room and placed a stack of papers on the table. "We'll start with some questions. What is your connection to McAllister's store?" Vanessa looked up and, remembering Jay's words, responded firmly, "I won't answer any questions until my lawyer arrives." The officer raised an eyebrow, surprised by the firmness in her voice, but he did not press further. "All right, Ms. Davis. You can wait." As time passed, Vanessa realized that this situation was not just an isolated incident. There was something much bigger at play, a battle Jay knew well, and that she was now about to face in an even more personal way. As Vanessa waited in the interrogation room, time seemed to stretch endlessly. The anguish was intense, but she clung to the hope that Jay would soon arrive to pull her out of this nightmare. And it wasn't long before that hope materialized. Outside the station, A sleek black luxury car pulled up quickly. Jay Davis, a tall, well-dressed 35-year-old, stepped out of the car with determined strides. His dark gray suit was immaculate, and his expression conveyed a mix of calm and resolve. He had faced many battles in his life, but this one was personal, making him even more focused. As Jay entered the station, he was met by a young officer who eyed him with suspicion. Jay ignored the look and headed straight for the reception desk. "Good afternoon," Jay began, his voice deep and controlled. "My name is Jay Davis. My wife, Vanessa Davis, was brought here under false accusations. I'd like to see her immediately." The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with short hair and glasses, looked at him with some surprise upon hearing the name. She had heard of him, who in Memphis hadn't. Jay Davis was a prominent attorney, known for his relentless work defending civil rights. The kind of person who made a difference when he walked into a courtroom. "Oh, Mr. Davis." She quickly typed something into her computer. "I'll call the detective in charge of your wife's case. He'll be here in a minute." While he waited, Jay crossed his arms, his face impassive, but his heart racing with concern for Vanessa. He knew this situation was a reflection of the injustices that so many others face daily, but that didn't lessen his anger at what Vanessa was going through. Minutes later, the detective in charge appeared. A burly, middle-aged man with a hardened expression. He extended his hand to Jay, but Jay greeted him with only a nod. "Mr. Davis, I'm Detective Carter. I understand you're here for your wife, Vanessa Davis." "That's right," Jay replied, his tone indicating he wasn't here for small talk. "I want to see her immediately, and I want to know what evidence you have against her." Detective Carter hesitated for a moment. "Well, Mr. Davis, we were called because the security at McAllister's reported that your wife was acting suspiciously. We're just doing our job." "Acting suspiciously? That's not a crime. I'm asking what evidence you have." "If there's none, you've made a serious mistake bringing my wife here," Jay said, his voice growing firmer. Carter straightened up, feeling the pressure. "We're following protocol, Mr. Davis. She was accused by the store security, and we're just following procedure by bringing her in for questioning." Jay stepped closer, his gaze fixed on the detective. "Listen, detective, my wife is a respectable woman with no criminal record. She was unfairly targeted, and I won't tolerate her being treated like a criminal without a shred of evidence against her. Now, I want to see her, and I want these charges dropped immediately." Carter, recognizing the seriousness of the situation and the potential trouble it could cause for the department, nodded. "Understood, Mr. Davis. I'll take you to her." They walked through the station's corridors to the interrogation room where Vanessa was. When the door opened, Jay saw Vanessa sitting with a distant look, clearly shaken. As soon as she saw him, her eyes filled with relief. "Jay," Vanessa whispered, standing up from the chair. Jay quickly walked to her and enveloped her in a firm embrace. "I'm here, love. This will be over soon, I promise." Vanessa held onto him tightly, tears finally falling. "I can't believe this is happening. They treated me like I was a criminal, Jay." "I know," Jay replied, gently letting her go to look into her eyes. "But I'm going to get you out of this. We'll sort this out." Detective Carter, observing the scene, cleared his throat to get Jay's attention. "Mr. Davis, Ms. Davis is free to go. It seems there was a misunderstanding." Jay turned to the detective, his eyes still serious. "It's not just a misunderstanding, detective. This was a clear case of racial discrimination. I'll make sure everyone responsible for this is held accountable." Carter swallowed hard. He knew he was dealing with someone powerful, someone who had the ability to turn this incident into something much bigger. "Understood, Mr. Davis." Jay placed a hand on Vanessa's back, guiding her out of the room. As they walked through the station's corridors, Vanessa felt the weight of humiliation beginning to lift, replaced by the reassurance Jay provided. In the car, as they drove home, Vanessa looked at Jay, her eyes still red from tears. "What do we do now, Jay?" He looked at her, his expression determined. "We're going to seek justice, Vanessa. No one should go through what you went through today, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows about it." As the city of Memphis continued its daily routine, it was on the brink of witnessing a fight for justice that would echo far beyond this incident. Jay Davis was not just an angry husband. He was a man on a mission, and no one was going to stop him. The next day after the store incident, Vanessa was still trying to regain her composure. Although Jay had been a rock of support, the experience had left her deeply shaken. The simple act of leaving the house felt daunting, and the thought of facing the outside world was almost unbearable. But Jay knew this was only the beginning of a long battle. While Vanessa was in the kitchen, preparing a cup of tea to calm her nerves, Jay entered the living room with his cell phone in hand and a serious expression. He had just finished a series of important calls, and it was clear that something significant was underway. "Vanessa," he began, approaching her, "I need you to be prepared for what's coming." She looked at him, her gaze still somewhat lost but now mixed with growing determination. "What do you mean, Jay?" He sighed, sitting down beside her. "I've spoken with some media contacts. I think it's time to bring this story to light. What happened to you can't just be forgotten, and we need to expose this injustice to as many people as possible." Vanessa placed the teacup on the table, her heart racing. "You want to take this story to the media?" "Yes," Jay replied, looking her in the eyes. "I want everyone to know what happened. If we don't do this, that store and those people will continue to treat others the same way. And we can't let that happen." Vanessa was silent for a moment, absorbing his words. The idea of having her humiliation and pain exposed to the public was frightening, but at the same time, she knew Jay was right. "And what if people don't believe me? What if they think I'm exaggerating?" Jay held her hand firmly. "You're not exaggerating, and I'll be by your side every step of the way. I won't let anyone discredit you." Vanessa nodded, feeling Jay's strength transferring to her. "Okay, Jay. If this is what we need to do, I'm with you." That same day, Jay organized a press conference at his office. The room was filled with journalists, TV reporters, and even some civil rights advocates who had been invited to support the couple. Vanessa was nervous, but beside Jay, she felt a little more secure. When the couple walked into the room, the flashes from cameras and the murmur of journalists filled the space. Jay walked to the microphone with Vanessa by his side, maintaining a confident stance. "Good afternoon, everyone," Jay began, his voice clear and firm. "We're here today to talk about an incident that occurred yesterday at McAllister's store involving my wife, Vanessa Davis. She was unjustly accused of theft, treated like a criminal, and publicly humiliated, all without any evidence or justification." The journalists began scribbling notes frantically, while some raised their hands, eager to ask questions. "I'd like to clarify," Jay continued, "that this isn't just a personal issue. What happened to Vanessa is something many Black Americans face daily, being judged based on skin color. This is unacceptable. We will take all necessary legal steps to ensure that this store and its employees are held accountable. But more than that, we're here to say that this practice needs to stop." Vanessa, still nervous but now more determined, stepped up to the microphone. Jay squeezed her hand, giving her courage. "I'm not here to play the victim," Vanessa began, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "I'm here to demand respect and justice. I was treated like a criminal just because someone decided I looked suspicious. This can't continue. Not just for me, but for everyone who goes through this and doesn't have a voice to fight back." Reporters started asking questions in rapid succession. "Mr. Davis, do you plan to sue the store?" "Vanessa, how did it feel to be treated this way?" Jay raised his hand to silence the crowd. "Yes, we will sue the store, and yes, this will become a high-profile case. We're fighting for justice for Vanessa and for everyone who has been a victim of racial discrimination." Vanessa looked at the journalists, feeling a heavy burden on her shoulders, but also a burning sense of purpose inside her. She didn't want anyone else to go through what she had experienced. After the press conference, as the couple headed home, Vanessa felt a mix of emotions. She was relieved to have spoken out, but at the same time, she knew the fight was just beginning. "You were amazing," Jay said, holding her hand as he drove them home. "I don't know if it was amazing," Vanessa replied with a small smile, "but I know it needed to be done. Now, we need to prepare for what's next," Jay asserted. "People will want to know more about you, about us. We need to be ready to tell our story the right way." Vanessa looked at him and, for the first time since the incident, felt like she had control of her life again. She was not just a victim. She was a woman fighting for her dignity and for changes that could help many others. And with Jay by her side, she knew this fight would be worth it. The news about Vanessa's incident spread quickly across Memphis and beyond. In the days following the press conference, the city was engulfed in a climate of outrage and solidarity. Everywhere, from local churches to radio shows, people talked about Vanessa Davis's case. Systemic racism, which was often treated as a distant issue or hidden in the shadows, was now in the spotlight. That week, Jay and Vanessa were invited to attend a community meeting organized by local leaders and civil rights activists. The meeting would be held at Bethel Baptist Church, one of the oldest and most respected churches in the city. The church, with its dark wooden pews and colorful stained glass windows, had been the site of many justice movements over the years. And now, it was about to become the epicenter of another fight for equality. When Jay and Vanessa arrived at the church that evening, they were greeted by a crowd of people who had already gathered outside. The sound of conversations was muffled by an energy of determination and hope. People held signs with phrases like, "Justice for Vanessa," and "Say no to racism." The support was palpable. Inside the church, Pastor Lewis, a 60-year-old man with graying hair and an imposing presence, waited at the pulpit. He was known for his commitment to social justice and his ability to unite the community in times of crisis. As Vanessa and Jay entered, he approached with a warm smile. "Jay, Vanessa, it's an honor to have you here," Pastor Lewis said, shaking their hands. "Your courage is inspiring many, and we're all here to support you." "Thank you, Pastor," Vanessa replied, feeling a bit more at ease seeing so many people gathered in solidarity. "It means a lot to us." The pastor nodded and then addressed the microphone to start the meeting. "My brothers and sisters," he began, his voice resonating through the church's nave. "Today, we gather to support one of our own, Vanessa Davis, who has been a victim of an injustice that, unfortunately, many of us know all too well. But we're not here just to mourn. We're here to act." The crowd applauded and murmured in agreement. Jay and Vanessa sat in the front row as the pastor continued to speak. "Vanessa, do you have something to say to our community?" Pastor Lewis asked, extending his hand in her direction. I just want to thank everyone for being here," Vanessa began, her voice a bit shaky. "These past few days have been the hardest of my life, but seeing all of you here gives me strength. I know what happened to me isn't unique. Many of you, or people you know, have gone through something similar, and it needs to stop." A murmur of support rippled through the crowd. Vanessa took a deep breath and continued. "I'm here today to fight, not just for myself, but for all of us. For the right to be treated with respect and dignity, no matter who we are or where we come from. I'm determined to take this fight to the end, with the support of all of you." The audience erupted in warm applause as Vanessa stepped back, visibly emotional. Jay stood up to greet her, enveloping her in a protective embrace. Pastor Lewis then passed the microphone to various community members, who shared personal stories of discrimination and injustice. Many were moved to tears as they spoke, and the atmosphere in the church became a mix of pain, solidarity, and determination. There was a shared understanding that this was not just Vanessa's fight, but everyone's fight. During a break, a young woman with dark skin and expressive eyes, who introduced herself as Tasha, approached Vanessa. "I just wanted to tell you that you're an inspiration to many of us," Tasha said, her voice full of sincerity. "I myself I've been through similar situations, but I never had the courage to speak up. Seeing you and Jay fighting for justice gives me hope that things can change." Vanessa smiled, feeling an instant connection with Tasha. "Thank you, Tasha. I'm just trying to do what's right. And knowing that this might help others makes it all worth it." As the meeting continued, Jay was approached by a group of lawyers and activists offering legal and strategic support. One of them, a middle-aged man with a graying beard and a determined look, introduced himself as Samuel Reed, a civil rights attorney. "Jay, I wanted to offer my help," Samuel said. "If you need someone to join your team, I'm available. I believe that together we can take this case far and set a precedent that will benefit many." Jay shook Samuel's hand, recognizing the importance of having more allies in this battle. "Thank you, Samuel. Your help will be greatly appreciated." This case is too big for any of us to handle alone. When the meeting ended, Jay and Vanessa left the church accompanied by several community members who promised to continue supporting the cause. As they walked back to the car, Jay looked at Vanessa with a mix of pride and concern. "You were amazing today," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "This community is behind you, and that's powerful." Vanessa smiled, feeling strengthened by the unity she had witnessed. "I never imagined so many people would be willing to fight by our side. It gives me the strength to keep going." "That's the power of the community," Jay replied, opening the car door for her. "Together, we can make a difference." And that's exactly what we're going to do. As the car pulled away from the church, Vanessa looked out the window, reflecting on everything that had happened. The support she felt that night renewed her determination. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but with Jay by her side and an entire community behind her, she was ready to face any challenge. The fight for justice was just beginning, and Vanessa was more prepared than ever to fight for a better future, not just for herself, but for everyone who shared in her struggle. In the days following the community meeting, the media could not stop talking about Vanessa's case. The support from the Memphis community caused the story to spread beyond the city limits, gaining attention on national TV programs and major newspapers. However, with the growing attention came the first attempts to discredit her. One afternoon, while Vanessa was at home reviewing supportive emails, Jay entered the room with a worried expression. He carried a folder full of documents and news clippings. "Vanessa, we need to talk," Jay said, sitting beside her on the couch. She looked at him, immediately sensing that something was wrong. "What's happened?" Jay sighed deeply before continuing. "We've received notices that McAllister's has hired a team of lawyers to start a counterattack. They're trying to divert attention from what really happened and cast doubt on your version of events." Vanessa felt a knot form in her stomach. "What are they saying?" Jay opened the folder and pulled out some papers, showing her headlines from blogs and sensationalist news sites. "They're spreading rumors, trying to twist what happened that day. They're claiming you were being aggressive in the store, that it was a security issue and not racism." "That's a lie," Vanessa exclaimed, feeling her anger rise. "I didn't do anything wrong. They know that." "I know, Vanessa," Jay said, holding her hand. "But these are dirty tactics they're using to try and tarnish your reputation. They're trying to turn you into the villain of the story." Vanessa sat in silence for a moment, feeling a mix of rage and despair. "What are we going to do, Jay? How can we fight against this?" Jay looked into her eyes, his expression determined. "We'll stick to our strategy. We already have the support of the community and several civil rights organizations. I'll respond to these attacks firmly, but with the facts on our side. We can't let them intimidate us or make us back down." As Jay spoke, Vanessa's phone began to ring. She looked at the screen and saw it was Tasha, the young woman she had met at the community meeting. "It's Tasha," Vanessa said, answering the call. "Hi, Tasha. How are you?" "Vanessa, I wanted to let you know about something I saw on social media," Tasha said, her voice sounding concerned. "There's a lot of horrible stuff being shared about you. They're trying to paint you as someone who was looking for trouble in that store. You need to see this." "Jay just showed me some of these attacks," Vanessa replied, feeling the weight of the situation intensify. "It's infuriating." "I know," Tasha said, with a supportive tone, "but I want you to know that the community is on your side. We're ready to support you and Jay in anything you need. And we won't let these lies spread without a response." Vanessa smiled, feeling grateful for the support. "Thank you, Tasha. That means a lot to me. We'll need all the help we can get." "We're here for you," Tasha said before ending the call. Jay, who had overheard part of the conversation, placed his hand on Vanessa's shoulder. "That's the difference between us and them, Vanessa. They might try to bring you down with lies, but we have the truth and an entire community on our side. That makes all the difference." Vanessa took a deep breath, trying to calm her swirling thoughts. "I just don't understand how people can be so cruel. It's not just about me. It's about everyone who faces this kind of discrimination and injustice. And that's exactly why they're reacting this way," Jay said, his voice steady. "Because they know you're right, and if you win, many others will feel encouraged to fight too." At that moment, Jay's phone rang. He looked at the screen and saw it was Samuel Reed, the attorney who had offered to help with the case. Samuel, Jay answered the call. I assume you've seen what they're trying to do. Yes, Jay, Samuel replied, his voice serious. I've already started working on a legal response to these allegations. We can't let this gain traction. I'm calling a meeting with the team tomorrow to plan our next steps. Great, Jay said. We're going to win this battle, but we need to be prepared for anything. After hanging up, Jay looked at Vanessa. Tomorrow we'll meet with Samuel and the other lawyers. We need to be ready for whatever they throw at us. Vanessa nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility increase, but also determined not to back down. I'm ready, Jay. If they want to fight, that's exactly what they're going to get. Jay smiled, proud of his wife's strength. We'll get through this together, Vanessa. And in the end, the truth will prevail. That night, as Vanessa prepared for bed, she reflected on what lay ahead. The idea of being targeted with such cruel attacks was frightening, but she knew she wasn't alone. With Jay by her side, the community supporting her, and the truth as her most powerful weapon, she was determined to fight to the end. The next morning, Jay and Vanessa met with Samuel Reed and his team at a law office in downtown Memphis. The atmosphere was tense, but the determination was palpable. Vanessa felt the weight of everything at stake, but she was ready to face whatever came next. Samuel welcomed them into the conference room, where a large wooden table was covered with documents, folders, and open laptops. The attorneys on the team were busy reviewing the latest allegations and preparing a solid strategy to counterattack. Good morning, Vanessa, Jay. Samuel greeted the couple with a firm handshake. I hope you've rested, because today we're going to outline our response and take the next step. We're ready, Samuel, Jay replied, guiding Vanessa to a chair beside him. We need to make sure that this attempt to defame Vanessa doesn't succeed. Samuel nodded and pulled up a chair to sit across from the couple. We're already working on a strong response. Our priority now is to control the narrative. We'll target McAllister's credibility, exposing any discriminatory behavior or practices we can find. We need something more concrete, something that goes beyond Vanessa's word against theirs. Vanessa furrowed her brow, concerned. What are you suggesting, Samuel? I've already told everything that happened, but it seems like they're twisting every detail. Samuel took a deep breath before responding. We need additional witnesses or evidence, something that can corroborate your version of events. And I have an idea of where we can start. He stood up and grabbed a file from across the table, handing it to Jay. This is a list of employees who were working at the store that day. We've done a preliminary investigation and found that one of the employees was fired shortly after the incident. Jay quickly skimmed through the file. Do you think he might know something? It's possible, Samuel replied. He might have been fired because he knew too much, or maybe because he disagreed with how Vanessa was treated. We'll reach out to him and see if we can get any useful information. Vanessa, who had been listening intently, finally spoke. If he knows something that could help me, it could change the whole course of the case. Exactly, Samuel agreed. We'll also continue gathering statements from other customers who were in the store at the time of the incident. We've already contacted 2 people who confirmed your version, but we need more. Jay nodded, agreeing with the approach. And what about McAllister's counterattack? How are we going to deal with that? We're working on that too, Samuel said. We'll refute each of the false claims with concrete evidence, and at the same time, we'll reinforce the message that this is a clear case of racial discrimination. We can't let them shift the focus. Vanessa, feeling a glimmer of hope, leaned forward. And if we manage to get this former employee to speak, could that be the proof we need? It could be, Samuel said, but we need to act quickly. If he has important information, we can use it to pressure the store into a settlement, or take the case to court with an even stronger foundation. As the meeting continued, one of the team's attorneys, a young woman named Kelly, entered the room with a serious expression. Samuel, Jay, Vanessa, she began, holding a tablet. We've received a message from an anonymous whistleblower. They claim to have compromising information about McAllister's policies regarding black customers. Everyone in the room fell silent for a moment, processing the information. What does it say? Samuel asked, clearly interested. Kelly placed the tablet on the table, showing the message. The whistleblower claims that the store has an internal policy instructing employees to be particularly vigilant with black customers, especially women. They say there are records of these instructions in internal emails. Vanessa felt a chill run down her spine. This is horrible. How can they do something like this? If this is true, it could be the turning point, Jay said, with a grave expression. We need to get these proofs. Samuel agreed, already thinking about the next steps. We'll respond to the whistleblower and request more details. We need to verify that this information is legitimate, and if it is, we'll use it to blow the case wide open. Vanessa, now filled with new hope, looked at Jay. If we can prove this, it will make it clear that what happened to me wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of discrimination. Exactly, Samuel said. And this could not only help your case, Vanessa, but also put an end to this practice once and for all. The meeting ended with a list of actions to be taken. Jay and Vanessa left the office with a mix of concern and determination. The road ahead was still uncertain, but now they had a new weapon in their arsenal. As they walked back to the car, Vanessa stopped and looked at Jay. I know we still have a long way to go, but I feel like we're closer to getting justice. Jay smiled and held her hand. We are, Vanessa. And no matter what happens, we'll fight until the end. Vanessa nodded, feeling stronger than ever. She knew the system was powerful, but she also knew that the truth and justice were on her side. And with Jay, Samuel, and an entire community supporting her, she was ready to face anything. A few days after the meeting with Samuel, Jay and Vanessa were anxiously awaiting the anonymous whistleblower's response. The law office was on high alert, waiting for the evidence that could change the outcome of the case. Vanessa was at home, trying to focus on her daily activities, but anxiety was evident. While making breakfast, Jay entered the kitchen with a sense of urgency. Vanessa, he said, his eyes shining with excitement, we've received a response from the whistleblower. She stopped what she was doing and looked at him, her heart racing. And what did they say? Do they have the proof? Jay nodded. Yes. They sent copies of internal emails that clearly show management's directive at McAllister's to treat black customers differently. They used words like monitor and prevent risks when referring to us. Vanessa was silent for a moment, absorbing the impact of this revelation. This is terrible. They really institutionalized racism. This is bigger than just what happened to me. Exactly, Jay said, his voice filled with determination. These emails are the evidence we need. With this, we can not only prove that you were a victim of racism but also expose a widespread practice. Vanessa moved closer to Jay, her eyes filled with emotion. I knew something was wrong at that store, but I never imagined it was this deep. This changes everything. Jay hugged her, feeling the tension in her body. We're taking this to court. And not just that, we'll make sure everyone knows what McAllister's has been doing. They won't get away with this. Later that day, Jay and Vanessa went to Samuel's office to discuss the next steps. The atmosphere in the conference room was charged with anticipation as Samuel reviewed the received emails. This is exactly what we needed, Samuel said, turning the laptop screen so everyone could see the emails. These documents are irrefutable proof that not only was racism tolerated at McAllister's, but it was actively encouraged. And the fact that we obtained this from an internal source only strengthens our position. Kelly, the young attorney, was also in the room, carefully reviewing the documents. These emails reveal a systematic practice of discrimination. We can use them to sue McAllister's not only for what happened to Vanessa but also for a class action on behalf of all black customers who were treated similarly. Vanessa felt a shiver run down her spine. A class action? That could have a massive impact. Yes, Samuel replied, his eyes gleaming. This is our chance to put an end to this practice once and for all. We can seek significant financial compensation and demand permanent changes to the company's policies. Jay, sitting next to Vanessa, looked cautious but determined. We need to make sure this doesn't turn into a simple settlement. We want justice, not just money. I agree, Samuel said, his tone serious. We'll negotiate firmly. If McAllister's wants to avoid a trial, they'll have to do more than just pay a fine. They'll need to commit to changing their practices with independent oversight to ensure these changes are implemented. Vanessa looked at Samuel, impressed by his clarity. And if they refuse? Then we take it to court, Samuel said without hesitation. With this evidence, we have a strong chance of winning. Plus, media pressure will be on our side. They won't want to risk further damage to their reputation. Vanessa nodded, feeling the weight of Samuel's words. I'm ready for this. No matter the outcome, I'll fight until the end. That's the right attitude, Kelly said, smiling at Vanessa. You're not alone in this fight, Vanessa. Many people believe in you and want to see justice served. Thank you, Kelly, Vanessa replied, touched by the support. That gives me more courage. With the next steps outlined, the team prepared for the battle ahead. Vanessa knew that despite all the challenges, she was closer than ever to achieving justice. And with the evidence now in her hands, she had confidence that the truth would finally be revealed. In the days that followed, the media began to broadcast the allegations against McAllister's based on the leaked information. The story took over social media and television programs, generating a wave of outrage and support across the country. Meanwhile, at Samuel's office, the team was finalizing preparations for the legal action. Vanessa knew the battle was far from won, but now, more than ever, she believed that justice was within reach. And with Jay by her side, and the support of so many others, she was ready to face whatever came next. On the day scheduled for the meeting between Vanessa's lawyers and McAllister's representatives, the atmosphere was one of tension and anticipation. The meeting would be held at a luxury hotel in downtown Memphis, in a conference room reserved for negotiations. Vanessa and Jay arrived early, accompanied by Samuel Reed and his team. The air was charged with electricity, as if everyone knew that this moment could determine the outcome of an intense battle. Vanessa, dressed in an elegant black suit, felt her heart race with every step she took toward the conference room. Jay, by her side, gently squeezed her hand, offering the comfort and reassurance she so desperately needed. "It's going to be okay, Vanessa," he murmured, looking at her with confidence. "We're ready for this." She forced a smile and nodded, trying to stay calm. "I know we are, but I can't help feeling this anxiety. They're going to do everything they can to destabilize us." "Yes, but we're here to make sure that doesn't happen," Samuel, walking beside them with a serious expression, replied. "We have the evidence, we have the truth, and we have the strength of the community on our side. They know they're at a disadvantage." As they entered the room, McAllister's lawyers were already there, seated on the opposite side of the table. The head of the team, Richard Turner, was a tall, imposing man with a cold, calculating gaze. He stood up upon seeing Samuel and extended his hand in a formal but emotionless greeting. "Samuel," Richard said in a professional yet distant tone, "I hope we can resolve this quickly and efficiently." Samuel shook Richard's hand, his expression firm. "I hope so too, Richard. But we're here to ensure that justice is served." Everyone took their seats at the table, with Vanessa and Jay positioned next to Samuel and Kelly, who was tasked with monitoring and taking notes during the meeting. The tension was palpable as Richard began to speak. "Let's get straight to the point," Richard said, opening a folder in front of him. McAllister's acknowledges that there was an unfortunate incident involving Ms. Vanessa and that the situation was mishandled by our staff. "We are prepared to offer a substantial financial settlement to resolve this matter amicably and avoid a lengthy court battle." Vanessa glanced at Samuel, who maintained his calm and controlled demeanor. "A financial settlement isn't enough, Richard," he replied. "What happened to Vanessa wasn't an isolated incident. We have evidence that discrimination is a systemic practice in your company, and this is something that needs to be exposed and corrected." Richard furrowed his brow, clearly unhappy with the direction of the conversation. "Samuel, with all due respect, let's remember that we're here to negotiate. Let's avoid accusations that could complicate the situation further." Samuel remained unfazed. "Complicate the situation? Richard, your company is already in trouble. The emails we have are just the beginning. We can prove that McAllister's deliberately instructed its employees to discriminate against black clients. Vanessa isn't just seeking financial compensation. She wants real and tangible changes." Vanessa felt a surge of pride for Samuel as he spoke. He was articulating exactly what she felt, and he was doing so relentlessly. Richard took a deep breath, clearly uncomfortable. "We are willing to discuss terms that involve changes in the company's practices, but let's be reasonable." At that moment, Jay leaned forward, deciding it was time for him to speak as well. I hope you understand the gravity of the situation, Mr. Turner. We're talking about more than just money or settlements. We're talking about lives affected by discrimination every day. My wife isn't the only one, and that's why we won't settle for anything less than real change. Richard looked at Jay, recognizing the seriousness in his eyes. We understand your point, Mr. Carter, and we acknowledge that there are issues that need to be addressed. We could propose setting up an oversight committee to review and reform internal customer service practices. Additionally, we might consider a significant contribution to organizations fighting racial discrimination. Vanessa, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke. Her voice was calm but filled with conviction. That would be a start, Mr. Turner, but I also want to see accountability. I want McAllisters to publicly admit their wrongdoing and commit to concrete measures to change. And I'm not talking about a generic apology. I'm talking about real actions that ensure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. Richard was silent for a moment, clearly weighing the risks and benefits. We'll need to discuss this with our board, he said finally, but I'm willing to take these proposals forward. Samuel nodded. We expect a response soon, Richard. This case has gone on long enough, and any delay will only further damage McAllister's reputation. As the meeting drew to a close, Richard stood up, followed by his team. I'll do my best to expedite this. We have no interest in dragging this out. After the McAllisters' lawyers left the room, Vanessa let out a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the past few months. Jay immediately put his arm around her. You were amazing, he said softly. The way you spoke, how you stood your ground. I'm so proud of you. Vanessa looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. I just want this to end, Jay. I want to see justice done. Samuel, who was gathering his documents, approached them. We made important progress today, but there's still a lot of work ahead. I'll make sure this proposal is taken seriously and that they don't try to backtrack. Vanessa nodded, grateful. Thank you, Samuel. I don't know what we'd do without you. We're in this together, Vanessa, Samuel replied with an encouraging smile. We'll make sure justice prevails, no matter what. As they left the hotel, Vanessa felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. She knew the fight was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, she felt that victory was within reach. And with Jay by her side, she was ready to face any challenge that came her way. After the decisive meeting with McAllister's lawyers, Vanessa and Jay found themselves at home, anxiously awaiting the company's response. The pressure was high, and the world was watching as their story continued to gain attention on social media and in the news. The sense of being at a crossroads was palpable. At dinner that night, Vanessa and Jay sat at the table, eating in silence. The worry was evident on their faces. Jay broke the silence, trying to ease the tension. Have you ever imagined what it would be like if all of this led to a major change? Jay asked, looking at Vanessa with a hopeful smile. Vanessa looked up, her thoughts still swirling around the meeting and the negotiations. It would be incredible, Jay, but it's hard not to worry. What if they decide to go for a full confrontation? What if? Jay interrupted her, holding her hand across the table. Hey, Vanessa, we're doing everything we can, and the truth is on our side. The community's support, the evidence we have, and our determination. That all makes a huge difference. I believe we're on the right path. I know, but the pressure is immense, Vanessa said, still feeling the emotional burden. What if they try to destabilize us? What if they try to make it seem like we're exaggerating? They might try, Jay replied firmly, but the truth is our most powerful weapon, and you're stronger than any tactic they might use. As they talked, Vanessa's phone rang. She looked at the screen and saw it was Samuel. With a quick glance at Jay, Vanessa answered the call. Hi, Samuel, how's it going? Vanessa asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Hi, Vanessa. I wanted to update you on the negotiations, Samuel said, his tone serious. The McAllisters' lawyers took our proposals to their board, and we've received a preliminary response. Vanessa felt her heart quicken. And what did they say? They're willing to make some changes, but they're still reluctant to accept all of our conditions, Samuel explained. They've agreed to set up an oversight committee and make a contribution to anti-discrimination organizations, but they're not willing to publicly admit fault or commit to a radical overhaul of their internal practices. Vanessa looked at Jay, her concern evident. So, we still have a ways to go? Yes, Samuel replied, but it's a step forward. We'll push harder for them to agree to a public statement and a concrete commitment to reform their policies. I need your help with this, Vanessa. Your voice can make a big difference. Jay took Vanessa's hand, showing his support. You're ready for this, Vanessa. I know it's tough, but this is your chance to make a difference. Vanessa took a deep breath and nodded. Let's keep fighting. We can't stop now. If that means demanding more, then that's what we'll do. Great, Samuel said with an encouraging tone. I'll keep negotiating with them and keep you updated. Stay alert for any news. And if you need support or anything else, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you, Samuel. We'll get this done, Vanessa said before ending the call. Jay smiled at her, admiring the courage and determination she was showing. You were amazing, Vanessa, and I'm by your side every step of the way. Thank you, Jay. I couldn't do this without you, Vanessa replied, squeezing his hand. The next morning, Vanessa was interviewed by a local journalist covering the case. The interview was broadcast live and had a significant impact. Vanessa spoke passionately about the need for change and the importance of McAllister's taking responsibility. I'm not just fighting for myself. Vanessa said to the camera, her voice steady. I'm fighting for all the people who face discrimination every day. I want McAllister's to acknowledge their mistakes and commit to changing their practices, not just financially compensating us, but making a real difference. The interview had a major impact, with many viewers expressing support on social media and urging McAllister's to take more significant action. Meanwhile, Samuel continued negotiating with McAllister's, facing resistance but also gaining additional concessions. After days of intense discussions, McAllister's agreed to make a public apology and implement significant changes to their practices. However, the agreement still needed to be finalized and approved by Vanessa and her team. Samuel scheduled a final meeting to discuss the terms and ensure that all conditions were met. Vanessa and Jay prepared for this meeting with a mix of nerves and hope. They knew they were close to a resolution, but there were still details to be worked out. At Samuel's office, the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Vanessa, Jay, and the legal team were ready to ensure that McAllister's would honor their promises and that justice would be served. We're almost there, Samuel said, looking at Vanessa and Jay with an encouraging smile. Just one more step, and we'll have the justice you deserve. Vanessa took a deep breath, feeling both adrenaline and determination. I'm ready. Let's make sure this is fair. With the meeting scheduled for the afternoon, Vanessa knew she was about to take an important step in her quest for justice. The future was still uncertain, but with each advance, she felt she was getting closer to making the world a bit fairer for everyone. The morning of the final meeting arrived with a sense of anxiety and anticipation. Vanessa and Jay prepared carefully, dressing formally and maintaining their composure despite the tension they felt. The meeting would be crucial for formalizing the agreement with McAllister's and ensuring that all promises made were kept. Samuel and Kelly were ready and waiting in Samuel's conference room. The room was organized with documents, folders, and laptops, prepared for the decisive meeting. When McAllister's team arrived, the atmosphere in the room grew even more charged. Richard Turner, the head of McAllister's legal team, was the first to arrive. He was accompanied by his team and seemed more serious than in previous meetings. After a brief greeting, everyone took their seats at the table. Good morning, everyone, Richard said, trying to sound cordial but lacking enthusiasm. We're here to finalize the negotiations and formalize the agreement. Samuel began speaking, his voice firm and clear. Good morning, Richard. We appreciate your willingness to discuss the final terms. Let's review what has been agreed upon so far and ensure all conditions are met. Certainly, Richard replied, opening a folder with the final documents. As discussed, McAllister's has agreed to the following conditions: a public apology, the creation of a supervisory committee to review and reform customer service practices, and a financial contribution to organizations combating racial discrimination. That's right, Samuel confirmed. Additionally, we want to ensure that McAllister's commits to implementing the changes transparently and with independent oversight. Richard made a note, clearly somewhat annoyed by the continued pressure. We are willing to accept these conditions, provided the final agreement also includes a confidentiality clause to protect the company's sensitive information. Vanessa, who had been listening attentively, decided to intervene. Richard, it's important to us that these changes are visible and effective. We want McAllisters to clearly show that they are committed to change, not just making a superficial agreement. Richard looked at Vanessa, somewhat surprised by her intervention. I understand, Vanessa. We can add a clause requiring periodic reports on the changes implemented. This should help ensure transparency. Samuel nodded, supporting the suggestion. Great. Periodic reports will help ensure that the changes are genuinely being made and will serve as proof of McAllister's commitment. Kelly, who was taking notes, raised her hand. Additionally, it would be prudent to include a follow-up period after the changes are implemented. This will ensure that any ongoing issues are addressed promptly. Richard hesitated for a moment, but then agreed. We can agree to that. We'll include a 6-month follow-up period to ensure that the changes are effective. Vanessa looked at Samuel and Kelly, feeling somewhat relieved. That sounds reasonable. And what about the public apology? How will that be handled? We plan to make a formal statement in the press and on social media, Richard replied. Additionally, we will ensure that the message is clear and that the company demonstrates its commitment to change. Make sure the statement is comprehensive and not just a generic apology, Vanessa requested. We want it to be clear that McAllisters acknowledges its failures and is genuinely committed to change. Richard took additional notes. Understood. We'll make sure the statement meets those requirements. After some final discussions about the details, Samuel addressed everyone with a smile. I believe we have an agreement that meets both parties' needs. We'll prepare the final documents for signing. The McAllisters team began reviewing and signing the documents, and the atmosphere in the room started to relax a bit. Vanessa and Jay watched closely, feeling a mix of relief and accomplishment. Thank you for your patience and determination, Vanessa, Samuel said as he reviewed the final documents. Your effort was crucial in achieving this outcome. I just want to ensure that this leads to real change, Vanessa replied with a grateful smile, and that no one else has to go through what I did. And that's what we're ensuring, Samuel said. With periodic reports and independent oversight, we have a solid foundation to make sure the changes are effective. With the documents signed and the terms agreed upon, the meeting came to an end. Vanessa and Jay left the room with a sense of accomplishment and renewed hope. The battle had been long and difficult, but they were finally seeing the fruits of their labor. As they left the office, Jay turned to Vanessa and hugged her. You did an amazing job. I'm so proud of you. Vanessa smiled, feeling the pressure lift a bit. We wouldn't have made it this far without your support, Jay, and without Samuel and the team. As they left the office, Vanessa looked up at the sky, feeling a wave of gratitude and relief. She knew the fight wasn't completely over, but she was one step closer to achieving justice and bringing about real change. With victory finally within reach, Vanessa and Jay prepared for the next chapter of their lives, ready to face new challenges and continue fighting for a fairer and more equal world. After signing the agreement and implementing the changes at McAllisters, Vanessa and Jay's lives began to stabilize. The pressure and anxiety of the previous months were replaced by a sense of accomplishment and renewed hope. Community support and media coverage helped ensure that McAllisters followed through on their promises. A month after finalizing the agreement, Vanessa and Jay were at the local community center, attending a celebration event organized to mark the victory and the importance of the fight against discrimination. The event featured speeches from community leaders, performances by local groups, and a range of activities to engage the community. Vanessa was on stage, alongside Samuel and Jay, preparing to give a speech. The audience was full of familiar faces and new friends who had joined the cause. Vanessa felt a mix of nervousness and gratitude. Good afternoon, everyone, Vanessa began, her voice resonating through the auditorium. We are here today to celebrate not just a personal victory, but a victory for all who fight against discrimination and injustice. The journey has been long and difficult, but today we are witnessing change. The audience applauded, and Vanessa continued, gaining confidence. I want to thank everyone who has been with us during this fight. Our friends, family, and especially the community that supported us. Without you, this victory would not have been possible. I'm not just fighting for myself, Vanessa said to the camera, her voice steady. I'm fighting for everyone who faces discrimination every day. I want McAllister's to acknowledge its mistakes and commit to changing its practices, not just through financial compensation, but by making a real difference. The interview had a huge impact, with many viewers expressing their support on social media and putting pressure on McAllister's to take more significant action. Meanwhile, Samuel continued negotiating with McAllister's, facing resistance but also securing some additional commitments. Finally, after days of intense negotiations, McAllister's agreed to make a public apology and implement significant changes in its practices. However, the agreement still needed to be finalized and approved by Vanessa and her team. Samuel scheduled a final meeting to discuss the terms and ensure that all conditions were met. Vanessa and Jay prepared for this meeting with a mix of nervousness and hope. They knew they were close to a resolution, but there were still details to be worked out. In Samuel's office, the atmosphere was tense but also expectant. Vanessa, Jay, and the legal team were ready to make sure that McAllister's kept its promises and that justice was served. We're almost there, Samuel said, looking at Vanessa and Jay with an encouraging smile. Just one more step, and we'll have the justice you deserve. Vanessa took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline and determination. I'm ready. Let's make sure this is fair. With the meeting set for the afternoon, Vanessa knew she was about to take an important step in her journey for justice. The future was still uncertain, but with each advance, she felt she was getting closer to making the world a little more just for everyone. The morning of the final meeting arrived, bringing with it a sense of anxiety and anticipation. Vanessa and Jay prepared carefully, dressing formally and maintaining their composure despite the tension they felt. The meeting would be crucial to formalizing the agreement with McAllister's and ensuring that all the promises made were fulfilled. Samuel and Kelly were ready and waiting in the conference room of Samuel's office. The room was organized with documents, folders, and laptops, ready for the decisive meeting. When McAllister's team entered, the atmosphere in the room became even more charged with electricity. Richard Turner, the head of McAllister's legal team, was the first to arrive. He was accompanied by his team and appeared more serious than in previous meetings. After a brief greeting, everyone sat down at the table. "Good morning, everyone," Richard said, trying to sound cordial but without much enthusiasm. "We're here to finalize the negotiations and formalize the agreement." Samuel began to speak, his voice firm and clear. "Good morning, Richard. We appreciate your willingness to discuss the final terms. Let's review what's been agreed upon so far and make sure all the conditions are met." "Of course," Richard replied, opening a folder with the final documents. As discussed, McAllister's has agreed to the following conditions: a public apology, the creation of an oversight committee to review and reform customer service practices, and a financial contribution to organizations fighting racial discrimination. "That's right," Samuel confirmed. "In addition, we want to ensure that McAllister's commits to implementing the changes transparently and with independent oversight." Richard made a note, clearly a bit uncomfortable with the continued pressure. "We're willing to accept these conditions, provided the final agreement also includes a confidentiality clause to protect the company's sensitive information." Vanessa, who had been listening intently, decided to speak up. "Richard, it's important to us that these changes are visible and effective. We want McAllister's to clearly show that it's committed to change, not just making a superficial agreement." Richard looked at Vanessa, somewhat surprised by her intervention. "I understand, Vanessa. We can add a clause that requires periodic reports on the changes implemented. That should help ensure transparency." Samuel nodded, supporting the suggestion. "Great. Periodic reports will help ensure that the changes are truly being made and will be proof of McAllister's commitment." Kelly, who was taking notes, raised her hand. "Additionally, it would be wise to include a follow-up period after the changes are implemented. This will ensure that any ongoing issues are addressed quickly." Richard hesitated for a moment, but then agreed. "We can agree to that. Let's include a 6-month follow-up period to ensure the changes are effective." Vanessa looked at Samuel and Kelly, feeling a bit relieved. "That seems reasonable. And what about the public apology? How will that be done?" We plan to make a formal statement to the press and on social media, Richard replied. Additionally, we'll make sure the message is clear and that the company demonstrates its commitment to change. Make sure the statement is comprehensive and not just a generic release, Vanessa requested. We want it to be clear that McAllister's acknowledges its failures and is truly committed to change. Richard made additional notes. Understood. We'll ensure the statement meets these requirements. After a few more discussions on the final details, Samuel addressed everyone with a smile. I believe we have an agreement that meets the needs of both parties. Let's prepare the final documents for signing. McAllister's team began reviewing and signing the documents, and the atmosphere in the room began to relax a little. Vanessa and Jay watched closely, feeling a mix of relief and accomplishment. Thank you for your patience and determination, Vanessa, Samuel said as he reviewed the final documents. Your effort was key to achieving this outcome. I just want to make sure this leads to real change, Vanessa replied with a grateful smile. And that no one else has to go through what I went through. And that's what we're ensuring, Samuel said. With the periodic reports and independent oversight, we have a solid foundation to make sure the changes are effective. With the documents signed and the terms agreed upon, the meeting came to an end. Vanessa and Jay left the room with a sense of accomplishment and renewed hope. The battle had been long and difficult, but they were finally seeing the fruits of their labor. As they exited the office, Jay turned to Vanessa and hugged her. You did an amazing job. I'm so proud of you. Vanessa smiled, feeling the pressure begin to lift. We wouldn't have gotten this far without your support, Jay, and without Samuel and the team's help. As they left the office, Vanessa looked up at the sky and felt a wave of gratitude and relief. She knew the fight wasn't completely over, but she was one step closer to achieving justice and promoting real change. With victory finally within reach, Vanessa and Jay prepared for the next chapter of their lives, ready to face new challenges and continue fighting for a fairer and more equal world. After the agreement was signed and the changes at McAllister's were implemented, Vanessa and Jay's life began to stabilize. The pressure and anxiety of the previous months were replaced by a sense of accomplishment and a renewed sense of hope. The community support and media coverage helped ensure that McAllister's followed through on its promises. A month after the agreement was finalized, Vanessa and Jay were at the local community center, attending a celebration event organized to mark the victory and the importance of fighting against discrimination. The event featured speeches from community leaders, performances by local groups, and various activities to engage the community. Vanessa was on stage, alongside Samuel and Jay, preparing to give a speech. The audience was full, with familiar faces and new friends who had joined the cause. Vanessa felt a mix of nervousness and gratitude. Good afternoon, everyone, Vanessa began, her voice echoing through the auditorium. We're here today to celebrate not just a personal victory, but a victory for everyone who fights against discrimination and injustice. The journey has been long and difficult, but today, we are witnessing change. The audience applauded, and Vanessa continued, feeling more confident. I want to thank everyone who stood with us during this fight, our friends, family, and especially the community that supported us. Without you, this victory wouldn't have been possible. Jay, standing beside Vanessa, gently took her hand and squeezed it. I'm so proud of you, he whispered. You've made a real difference. Vanessa smiled at him, feeling a wave of emotion. This wouldn't have happened without you, Jay. Your support was crucial every step of the way. Samuel, who was next to Vanessa, stepped forward to make a brief comment. I want to congratulate Vanessa for her courage and determination. Her fight not only brought justice for herself, but also helped expose unfair practices and promote significant changes. That's something we should all celebrate. The audience applauded again, and Vanessa realized the event was having a profound impact. The changes at McAllister's were being closely monitored, and the company had made significant progress in its customer service practices. The public statement and periodic reports showed a commitment to transparency and real change. After the event, Vanessa and Jay mingled with some of the attendees and community leaders, discussing the next steps to continue promoting equality and combating discrimination. Among the guests was the anonymous whistleblower who had provided the crucial evidence for the case. Vanessa, Jay, it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person, said the whistleblower with a shy smile. "I just wanted to help right a wrong, and seeing how everything has unfolded has been incredible." "We are deeply grateful for your courage," Vanessa replied, shaking his hand. "You made a tremendous difference, and your help was vital." Jay also expressed his gratitude. "Without your information, we wouldn't have been able to expose the truth. It was an act of great courage and integrity." "It was the right thing to do," the whistleblower said humbly. "And seeing the positive impact makes me feel it was all worth it." As they talked, Samuel joined the conversation. "The work doesn't end here. We'll continue to monitor the changes at McAllister's and work to ensure that other companies also adopt fair practices. The fight for justice is ongoing." Vanessa and Jay agreed, knowing that real change requires constant vigilance and continuous effort. Later, as they returned home, Vanessa and Jay reflected on the journey they had traveled. The path hadn't been easy, but the victory was a testament to their perseverance and determination. "In the end, I think the most important thing is that we showed change is possible," Vanessa said, looking at Jay with a smile. "And that there's hope," Jay replied, putting an arm around her. "Even when everything seems impossible, there's always a way to fight for justice." Vanessa leaned into Jay, feeling grateful to have such an incredible partner by her side. "Yes, and together, we can keep fighting and making a difference." As the sun set over Memphis, Vanessa and Jay felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The future was uncertain, but now there was a light of hope and the promise of a more just world. They knew the road ahead would still have its challenges, but they were ready to face them, armed with the certainty that justice and truth can prevail.